Hey guys, what's up? I'm Claire and welcome to Fix Your Wreck. This channel is going to be just a little project for me to talk about horses, and that's what I love, so why not make a YouTube channel about it? So I figured today, since it's my first video, like official video on this channel and not just a little video of me riding around with the ring or jumping over a couple of jumps, I would do one of the biggest debates in riding, like in the horse world, and that is which is harder, English or Western. Now I'm going to do another version of this where I have my Western friend who's never ridden English. I'm going to try and get her on in an English saddle before that video, but I'm not sure how that's going to work out, so I don't know. But I'm going to do another version of this with my Western friend so you can see more of the Western side of this. But as a disclaimer, I will say I have ridden Western before. I have. I swear I've shown Western before. So we'll get started with the video. Just needed to put that little disclaimer out there so that there wasn't any more confusion or any hate going on, because I don't like dealing with that stuff. Anyway, so I'm just going to start off with, in my opinion, English is harder. Now I'm going to go in depth and explain. In my opinion, English is harder because the English saddle doesn't really hold you in place as much as a Western saddle will. There's a smaller seat, there is less stable stirrups, you don't have as big of a stirrup leather as you would in a Western saddle. The seat is definitely a lot smaller than a Western saddle, and you don't have anything in front of you kind of keeping you from falling forward, and really nothing in back of you, because the back of the saddle is not very high. So that's something for you. You know, and when you're riding, your leg, if you don't have a steady leg in an English saddle, your leg is going to move. You know, if you don't have a steady leg, it's going to move. That's just the fact of the matter here. But in a Western saddle, if maybe you don't have as strong of a leg and you go from riding in an English saddle to a Western saddle and your leg isn't steady in an English saddle, it's going to be a lot steadier in a Western saddle. I don't know if that made sense, but hopefully it did. I find Western is more relaxing. So English is uptight. Yes, we're uptight a lot in our division of riding, and Western is a little bit more laid back. But in the Western show that I was in, I found the judge was very stuck up. You know, she had so many biases against me and the horse that I was riding, and you know, same thing in English, but that is definitely an aspect of Western that's harder to get around than in English. But back to the riding thing, I definitely do find that English is harder to ride. Especially with the whole jumping thing. I love to jump. It's my favorite thing to do, and I could do it all day long. You can't really jump in a Western saddle, but you know, your leg comes in a lot with that, your balance comes in. If you don't have good balance, when you're jumping, you're not going to be able to go very high, and you're not going to be very stable, and your leg is definitely not going to stay where it needs to be in an English saddle. That's what makes it harder. I don't know if any of you have seen the Western versus English videos on YouTube, but there's a channel that makes Western versus English, like a Western rider starts riding English and they have a little competition. The handicaps they use, the English rider went and did barrel racing. I did barrel racing and I got a pretty dang good time for it being maybe my second or third time ever barrel racing, and it was on a horse that, you know, has been ridden by so many beginners. He's kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing, you know, stuff like that, and I had a pretty good time. I mean, it wasn't awful, but it wasn't amazing, you know. But the handicap they gave the English rider and her horse as a hunter jumper, you know, they gave her 3 seconds that they would take off of her ending time, but she was jumping 3 foot or 2.6, and the Western girl only had to jump 18 inches or cross rails, and you know, that's not really fair, because what horse is going to knock a cross rail, you know? Especially if they're cantering over it. It's kind of hard for a horse to knock a cross rail if they're cantering over it, because they're going to end up jumping over it. They're not really going to step over it like they would at a trot, because the natural motion of a canter is going to take them over the jump in more of a jumping motion than a stepping motion, if you get where I'm going. But with the whole, which is harder, definitely I would say English. And yes, I've said this before, I have done both, and I found moving from an English to a Western saddle, my leg is stabler in a Western saddle. I have a pretty steady leg in an English saddle, not to brag or anything, but my leg is very steady in an English saddle, especially on horses that I ride. But in a Western saddle, it didn't move at all, and sitting the trot in a Western saddle is so much easier, because you're being held there by such a big seat, and it just kind of keeps you in the saddle without you really having to try. And it's also with the whole contact with the reins. You don't have to worry about contact with your reins in Western. All you have to worry about is like which side of the neck they're laying on more. But with English, you have to worry about your horse's headset, and like if they're engaged with their hind end and their front end, and if they're uphill or downhill, or you know, their head, and if you have contact with your reins, you know, you have to make sure of that. You have to constantly be concerned about what's going on with your horse and what's going on with your reins. But with the Western, with the Western discipline, I haven't really found that you have any contact with the reins at all, and that's really kind of what throws me off when I get in the Western saddle. Is I am more of a person who likes shorter reins. I like having that contact. I like feeling my horse's mouth and knowing that I have that control, and that if I get into the sticky situation where I need to pull my horse's head somewhere to get us out of that situation, I can. You know, this is turning into more of a which I like better, but you know, English, in my opinion, is harder. I've barrel raced and I've done Western pleasure. I've never done reining. It's never really something that's appealed to me, and I don't really have a horse to do it on, so I can't really voice my opinion about that. But I've done barrels and I have done Western pleasure. I've ridden dressage a couple of times, and I've definitely done my share of jumping and flat work and I've done flat work in both disciplines, Western and English. So I feel like I do have a little bit of experience in both, and that kind of but I feel like I've kind of got enough experience in both to kind of voice an opinion on it. You know, it's not an uneducated opinion or anything. So, yeah, if you like this video, go ahead and give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel down below. There's a little red button that says subscribe, so go ahead and click that if you like this. Even if you didn't, I hope you did, but even if you didn't, go ahead and still give it a thumbs up, because that would just make me so happy. Anyway, please like and subscribe down below. I love you guys.